See you next year, same time. Tallinn.
We love you, Denmark! We love you! All right!
BBC One invites you to the BAFTAs, the most glittering night in the celebrity calendar. Can Ali G pocket the Comedy Show Award? Will Anne Robinson see off the competition on the road to world domination?
You are the weakest link, goodbye.
And the royal family hope to clean up. But not if Victor Meldrew has a say in it. Join Angus Deaton and take your seat for the glamour and glitz of the BAFTA Television Awards, tomorrow at 8 on BBC One.
Your secret is out.
10 million people listen to Radio 2 every week. That's enough people to reach round the coast of Britain twice.
We broadcast live from the Country Music Awards in Nashville.
Come and join us.
Radio 2 plays over 1,500 tracks every week, most of which I choose myself.
43 disc jockeys bringing us a pageant of music. Everything from boogie-woogie, ska and other knees-up stuff.
There are millions of you tuning in, and we know who you are.
Radio 2, the most listened to radio station in the UK.
Now on BBC One, tonight's lottery results. In the National Lottery draw, the 6 winning numbers are confirmed as 6, 29, 30, 38, 39, 45, and the bonus is number 22. Early indications show that there are 2 jackpot winners, each collecting just over £4 million. The winning numbers in the lottery extra draw are 6, 11, 21, 34, 46 and 48. Initial reports show that there is one very lucky winner of tonight's jackpot, receiving an estimated £20 million. The National Lottery Thunderball numbers are confirmed as 2, 15, 24, 25 and 29, and the Thunderball is 7. The news now on BBC One with Sarah Montague.
The Conservatives say stealth taxes will go up under Labour. Labour accused the Tories of not controlling extremists in their party. The great train robber Ronnie Biggs will appeal against his prison sentence. So long and thanks for all the fish. Douglas Adams, the man behind Hitchhiker's Guide, has died. Good evening. The first weekend of the election campaign, and the main issues have been tax and Europe. The Tory leader William Hague has claimed the only way the government can raise the money it needs is through stealth taxes. He said it could mean petrol going up to £6 a gallon. But Labour, who've been campaigning today on their plans to help the elderly, say the poorest pensioners could be up to £500 a year worse off under the Conservatives. The Liberal Democrats claim they're the only party with honest spending plans.
If everyone was this keen on Tony Blair, Labour would have nothing to worry about. As it is, he's counting on a promise to hold down income tax to help Labour please the voters. Wife Cherie alongside Mr Blair saying that Labour can be trusted to deliver good public services after turning round the economy.
What we've got to do now is to build on those stable economic foundations, make sure that we keep inflation low, keep mortgages low, keep jobs high, and make sure also that we get the investment into our public services that give us the best education system in Europe, a decent national health service, and the numbers of police we need on our streets. And that is what we're doing.
William Hague needs a few more cheers if the polls are right, so he's predicting £6 for a gallon of fuel under Labour. His way of warning that taxes would go up to fund Labour spending.
The huge £10 billion tax increase that the Labour Party would have to introduce in order to finance their spending plans would have to be paid for by stealth taxes of one sort or another.
Economists say there may be a gap in Labour finances if spending rises at the current rate for another 5 years. The petrol price warning looks like a ploy.
I think it's inconceivable that we could see the kind of increase in petrol tax that Mr Hague is suggesting Mr Blair might go for, even were Mr Blair's government to win the election and to want to put up taxes. I'm sure this is not how they choose to do it.
The Lib Dems have been campaigning on tax rises as a way to guarantee good public services.
Because we're the only party that is saying, if you vote for us to achieve and deliver quality public services in terms of local schools, local hospitals, more police to combat crime, more support for pensioners, we're actually going to tell you where the tax will be levied, how much it will raise, and how much that can achieve.
Today, everyone in Labour's campaign is singing the praises of the government's economic record. The promise to hold down income tax comes later, and with it, Labour's hoping more popularity. Labour can also expect more accusations of planning to pay for its spending promises with other taxes instead. The Tories are calling them stealth taxes, and today's prediction of a £6 gallon of petrol was meant to provoke Labour into joining the debate about its tax plans. For all the parties winning that argument, and with it the trust of the voters, is a key objective in this campaign. John Pienaar, BBC News, Westminster.
Away from tax, the Conservative leader William Hague has refused to rebuke one of his senior MPs who compared plans for a closer European Union with Hitler's Mein Kampf. Sir Peter Tapsell also said he would never support a single European currency.
I'm very strongly Eurosceptic, as you know.
Sir Peter Tapsell campaigning at the last election. Since then, his views on Europe haven't changed, but even his own party has condemned the language of his latest comments. Last night, he warned party members not to ignore the plans of Germany's Chancellor for further European integration, drawing a parallel with Germany in the 1930s. We may not have studied Hitler's Mein Kampf in time, he said, but by heaven, there's no excuse for us not studying the Schroeder Plan now.
Sir Peter's language was inflammatory and exaggerated, but it's his own choice of language. It's not the view of the Conservative Party. We wouldn't make those sorts of comparisons.
But for Labour, the Chancellor Gordon Brown said if Sir Peter wasn't punished, William Hague would have failed a test of leadership.
A test as to whether he can bring himself to make clear to all his candidates that the kind of language used by Sir Peter Tapsell should have no place in British politics.
In opposing the euro for the next 5 years, Sir Peter stands shoulder to shoulder with his leader. But his pledge never to vote for a single currency is not party policy. Opponents say it's significant he hasn't been condemned for that.
No matter what Mr Hague may say in public, there's an increasing number of people in the Conservative Party who are wholly opposed to the single currency in all and any circumstances.
Pro-Europeans and sceptics have signed up to the same policy on a single currency, but only for the next 5 years. That should see them through this campaign. And privately, there are those here at party headquarters who, like Sir Peter Tapsell, believe ruling out joining the euro forever would have popular appeal. Sean Lay, BBC News at Conservative Central Office.
The first opinion polls since the Conservatives launched their election manifesto show no signs of a gain in support for them. The weekend polls continue to put Labour strongly ahead. Peter Snow's been looking at the figures.
Well, Sarah, if the Tories reckon they're off to a good start, there's no sign of that yet in the polls. 3 new ones tonight. NOP in the Sunday Times, talking to people yesterday and the day before. ICM in the Observer, also conducted Thursday and Friday. That's the biggest Labour lead in ICM for more than a year. And Murray in the Sunday Telegraph, sampling up to today. Now, all put Labour within a point or so of 50, the Conservatives on 32 and 31%, and the Lib Dems on 13 to 15. Now, here's where we'll plot the rise and fall in the battle for public support till election day. And the first cluster of polls when the election was called saw Labour as high as 54% and as low as 49, averaging 51, with the Tories averaging 32 and the Lib Dems 13. Now we can add tonight's 3 polls half a week later. Labour up here with less of a range than last time, averaging 49, the Tories 32 and the Lib Dems a point up at 14. But given that the margin of error is up to 3%, small changes like this are hardly significant. So on with our swingometer, and if voters don't swing from one major party to the other compared to the last election, Labour would maintain their majority of 179. But if people voted as they're telling the pollsters they will, the average swing tonight is 2% to Labour. And that would see Mr Blair back with a larger majority of around 200. But it is worth noting that when it comes to the real vote, in every national election in the last decade, Labour have done rather less well than their rating in the polls. Sarah.
Peter, thank you. The train robber Ronnie Biggs is to appeal against his original 30-year prison sentence. Biggs has been visited by his lawyer in the top security Belmarsh jail, where he's been kept since his return from Brazil on Monday.
Ronnie Biggs was banking on reducing his sentence when he flew home courtesy of the Sun newspaper and gave himself up to the police.
Ronald Arthur Biggs, I'm now going to formally arrest you.
He's officially still got 28 years of the 30-year sentence to serve. His lawyers spent several hours with him in prison. This evening they confirmed Ronnie Biggs will apply for permission to appeal. He claims by modern standards his sentence is too long, but there's no guarantee he'll even get a full hearing.
The normal time for making an appeal or seeking an appeal is in fact just 1 month, and here we're way out of that time. The Court of Appeal, however, has power to consider new evidence such as medical aspects.
Biggs was taken to the hospital wing at Belmarsh Jail. The prison service says he's ill but not suicidal. It's revealed he's formally being disciplined under prison rules for escaping back in 1965. Kevin Crace masterminded his return to the UK and has visited him several times.
His state of mind, again, he's in Belmarsh, which is a maximum security prison. So obviously he's trying to come to terms and cope with the confines of a maximum security prison. But I would say that he's very happy to be back in the United Kingdom, although physically his health is very, very poor.
If the appeal fails, Ronnie Biggs could still ask the Home Secretary to intervene on compassionate grounds. Margaret Gilmore, BBC News.
The Indian Supreme Court has ruled that 2 of the Hinduja brothers who face bribery and corruption charges there can leave the country before the case comes to trial. It was SP and GP Hinduja's applications for British passports that led ultimately to Peter Mandelson's resignation. The third brother has been told he must stay in India. The Ministry of Defence has admitted Australian servicemen were used in radiation experiments in the 1950s, but it denied putting them at risk. Papers found in an Australian archive reveal men were ordered to run, walk and crawl across contaminated areas to test clothing.
The South Australian desert was the scene for a series of substantial nuclear tests carried out by Britain during the 50s and 60s. At the time, the Australian government agreed to the programme.
We'd been informed there were going to be atomic explosions, but not in your wildest dreams did you think you'd be that close to an explosion of that force.
0. It's now alleged that a group of Australians were used as human guinea pigs by the British authorities. It's claimed that new documents prove they were dressed in various types of clothing and told to roll around in contaminated areas close to the explosion. The Ministry of Defence in London has confirmed the tests took place, but says radiation in the area was low.
The fact is that no veteran, to my knowledge, or to the knowledge of the Ministry of Defence, was subjected to radiation without their consent. Those who are claiming to have been are mistaken about the exposure that they had. That is what all the evidence suggests.
Even before these latest allegations, there was a growing sense here that this country was badly used by Britain during the nuclear testing era. The conduct of the British authorities will now come under even closer scrutiny. Michael Peshat, BBC News, Sydney.
5 people have been killed in 3 separate light aircraft crashes. A pilot died when his Second World War fighter plane crashed at an airfield in Northamptonshire. 2 people were killed when their light aircraft crashed at Ossey Island off the coast of Essex, and a further 2 people died after a light aircraft crashed as it was trying to take off from an airfield near Leicester. Football now, and Liverpool and Arsenal played a thrilling FA Cup final in Cardiff this afternoon. Highlights are on Match of the Day after the news, so if you don't want to know the score, look away now. With 1 game to go, St Mirren looks certain to be relegated from the Scottish Premier League despite beating Aberdeen 2-1. At the other end of the table, Kilmarnock were hoping to secure a place in Europe. Their match with Rangers and the game at Dunfermline are on Sportscene. So again, look away now if you don't want to know the outcome. Motor racing, and Michael Schumacher will be in pole position in tomorrow's Austrian Grand Prix. Schumacher will be starting from pole for the 5th time in 6 races this season as he bids to win the only Grand Prix that so far eluded him. There was disappointment for McLaren's David Coulthard, currently 2nd behind Schumacher in the Drivers' Championship. He'll start in 7th spot. The author Douglas Adams has died suddenly in California. He was 49. Douglas Adams became famous in the late 70s when his science fiction comedy, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, became first a cult radio and later a BBC television series. Our arts correspondent Nick Hyam looks back at his career.
As a radio series, it was joyously original. Science fiction crossed with knockabout comedy and metaphysical jokes. A television version followed, and a novel which sold 14 million copies.
Have a look at this. What is it? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a sort of electronic book. Tell you everything you want to know.
I like the cover. Don't panic.
Here is what to do if you want to get a lift from a Vogon. Forget it.
The Hitchhiker's Guide spawned a series of spin-offs like The Restaurant at the End of the Universe and So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, unsettling as well as satirical.
That's not to say that there isn't some sort of serious intent behind it, but I actually find I don't know what I think about anything until I find the right joke for it.
Today, Douglas Adams's personal website was inundated with messages of shock and condolence from friends and fans. The Hitchhiker's Guide made him a wealthy man. Technology genuinely fascinated him, and he indulged his passion in a series of books and high-tech ventures. He proved to be a visionary, but one whose jokes showed he understood the sometimes terrifying absurdity of the future. Nick Hyam, BBC News.
Well, that's the latest. There will be news throughout the night over on the BBC's election channel, News 24. But from us, good night.
Good evening to you. You probably don't need me to tell you how warm it was today, but here's a confirmation of the figures. And Southampton was top of our league at 27 degrees Celsius, but many other locations had some very warm weather and lots of sunshine as well. Tomorrow could be equally as warm. We may see 24, 25, a bit more cloud coming and going in the far south, may just knock the edge off those temperatures, and still the risk of the odd shower coming and going across parts of Scotland. But generally it cools down as we move into next week. We start to see quite a dramatic change in the temperatures. We'll start to lose those really high figures back to what we normally expect to see at this time of year. I've mentioned showers. Well, there's still 1 or 2 around right up in the far north of Scotland. They're gradually easing away now, but the thicker cloud coming in from the southwest could bring a few showers in the second half of the night, right in the far west of Cornwall, for instance. A mild night just about everywhere, 10, 11 or 12 degrees, I think, in the cities, but in the countryside down to around about 8 or 9. And then tomorrow we start to see some showers start in the far southwest and creep their way steadily northwards. Now some of those could turn out to be heavy and thundery for a while. They may well clear the far southwest, and also one more shower turning up across parts of Scotland perhaps during the course of the afternoon. But between those two lines of showers there should be a lot of warm, dry weather and more of that sunshine to enjoy as well. As a reminder of those figures, up to 24 or 25 degrees Celsius. On to Monday's forecast, generally a much cooler feel to the day. Some showery outbreaks of rain pushing their way northwards, but either side of that, some sunshine returning, so not too bad. Bye for now.
Suburbia.
Good morning, Hillary. Sam?
Uncovered.
Why, sir?
I just want to keep the peace, Mrs. C. The Conans have arrived, and they mean business.
Into a bit of home enterprise, are you? I might be able to help you out myself. Video work, you know what I mean.
Drop it! Drop it now!
All right!
Let's
see what we got here then, shall we? Residents, Wednesday at 10 on BBC Two.
First time I watched my son fight, he won the Olympic gold medal. I'm going to watch all his fights from now on.
The day he walked in here, you know what? He told me he was going to be a champ. I got it. And he is.
I think he's a big talent.
I got soul!
We're all really proud of him.
He's the man.
I'm teaching him some new moves.
Audley Harrison turns professional at 9:45 next Saturday live on BBC One and Radio 5 Live.
For live, uninterrupted commentary on tomorrow afternoon's Austrian Grand Prix. Tune in to BBC 5 Live from 1 o'clock on 909 and 693 AM. Chris Eubanks on They Think It's All Over, and it's one not to be missed in 50 minutes here on BBC One after all the action from today's FA Cup final. Match of the Day with Gary Lineker.
Welcome to Match of the Day.
Good evening. The 120th FA Cup final, and the first outside of Wembley for 79 years, brought together Liverpool and Arsenal. We'll hear from a totally impartial Alan Hansen later and have the goal of the season competition. But first, the game itself. The AXA-sponsored FA Cup final, watched at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff by Mark Lawrenson and John Motson.
9-year-old Ryan Rocastle makes FA Cup history today. In memory of his late father, David, he leads out the Arsenal team for the first FA Cup final outside Wembley for 79 years. His Liverpool counterpart is Luke Chollerton, 8 years old from Northampton. And they and the players are greeted by a 73,000 crowd in a stadium which, in terms of intimacy, atmosphere and comfort, unquestionably does justice to the FA Cup final. Not only the first to be contested at Cardiff, but the first with two overseas coaches. Arsene Wenger in his second FA Cup final with Arsenal, Gerard Houllier in his second final of this season, with the third still to come in Dortmund on Wednesday. But the UEFA Cup final did not come into consideration, Gerard Houllier told me when he made his team selection today. Gary McAllister, Robbie Fowler and Patrick Berger all left on the bench, all arrived at the ground looking very disappointed. Nick Barmby, Jari Litmanen and Christian Ziege not even in the 16. Starting roles for Danny Murphy and Vladimir Smicer, and the front two certainly fulfilled the form guide. Michael Owen with 6 goals in his last 3 games, Emil Heskey with 5 in this FA Cup campaign. Arsenal's Sylvain Wiltord goes one better with 6 FA Cup goals, and he starts ahead of fit-again Dennis Bergkamp, who is on the bench along with Ray Parlour, Carnu and Lauren, who was on standby to play at right back after a late injury scare to Lee Dixon. Dixon, David Seaman and Tony Adams are all playing in their 3rd FA Cup final. And before the kick-off, there will be a minute's silence in memory of those who've died in recent stadium tragedies. The latest in Ghana on Wednesday, when 126 people were killed. Liverpool supporters in particular will identify with this moment.